Today's talk is actually about the Dīghajāṇu Sutta, and I've just titled it as Happiness Visible in Present Life. I think as Sister Eileen mentioned just now, there's a lot actually in the Buddha's teaching, which after having studied it, if we are able to apply in our everyday life, then we find that the Dhamma becomes living, it becomes alive, it becomes so useful to us in our everyday life. Not only during moments when we are sad or unhappy, also during moments when we can enjoy happiness, peace, and tranquility. So the Buddha's teachings, in fact, has got a lot of relevance in our everyday life. That is why I think we all remember that in the very first sermon the Buddha gave, the Buddha says something to the effect that only one thing do I teach, dukkha and how to overcome dukkha, or suffering or unsatisfactoriness, so that we can actually find happiness in our life. Now, many people also have the impression that when they study Buddhism, it's very abstract, very abstruse, and it only talks about the afterlife, that what happens after we are dead. But actually, if we study the Buddha's teachings, you find that there are many teachings that the Buddha gave to both monks and lay people, which have got direct relevance to our very present life itself. Okay, so this is just one as an example. It's called the Dīghajāṇu Sutta. It's taken from the Book of Gradual Sayings, the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of 8.54, which means Chapter 8, Sutta 54. So there are 8 things in this discourse. But today, as I mentioned, that part 1. So I'm just going to cover the first 4 of the 8. All right, and then I believe if in subsequent sessions, then you have another Dhamma friend who will speak to you on the other 4 aspects from the Dīghajāṇu Sutta. Okay, so I think we are all fully aware, if we have studied the Dhamma for some time, that the teachings of the Buddha, actually when the Buddha talks about happiness or benefits of Dhamma, we can actually have what is called happiness in the present life itself, happiness for our future life, and then ultimate happiness. All right. So present life will be, for example, when we fulfill our moral precepts, our social duties. Even future lives, all right, we talk about engaging in meritorious deeds. And I think the future lives is what the next session in the Dīghajāṇu Sutta, the other 4 aspects, which will be dealt with in more detail. And of course, ultimate happiness, which is developing the Noble Eightfold Path, which helps us to transcend this samsaric existence that we have. All right. So I think it's very important for us to remember that the Dhamma is of great relevance to us as we practice our everyday life. Now, this discourse, which is called the Dīghajāṇu Sutta, the Buddha actually speaks to a householder called his name. Well, it's called Dīghajāṇu or Vigilance, but actually that is not really his name. Dīghajāṇu basically means that this person has got very long legs. Dīgha, as you know, is long, and Jāṇu will be knee, so long knee. Or Vagapaja, even that is not really his name, that is like tiger's paw. So we don't really know what was his actual name. All right, and during the Buddha's times, many of the characters actually are more like the titles, like you remember Anathapindika? Anathapindika is actually not his name again. It means like he's the feeder of the poor. But in Anathapindika's case, we do know that his name was Sudaka. Right? But in this case, we just use the word Dīghajāṇu. So we know that Dīghajāṇu or Vagapaja, he was a householder. Now, this word householder, during the Buddha's time, I think the Pali word that's been used is Gahapati. Some of you may have heard of this, though not a very common term, Gahapati. From this word Gahapati, then you have this word called Gahapati Mahasala, which means that's a very wealthy householder. During the Buddha's time, as you know, Buddha not only taught kings and princesses, but he also taught to very wealthy merchants, as well as very successful business people. All right, so they are wealthy householders. All right, so they're very wealthy householders, and the Pali word used at that time is Gahapati Mahasala. right? So the word householder is Gahapati. And then from the word Gahapati, then you have the word Upasaka, right? Upasaka, Upasika. So when the Gahapati, when the householder have understood the Buddha's teachings, when he observed, or when he goes to the Buddha, to the Dhamma, to the Sangha for refuge, then he becomes a what you call a Upasaka or Upasika. Just as during the Buddha's time, you find that a lot of those ascetics, like which we call the samana or the sramana in Sanskrit. So when the samana, when they come in contact with the Buddha's teachings and they accept the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and they become ordained, they become bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, right? So become monks. So just as Gahapati, you have Upasaka, you have the Sramana, then you've got the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis. So today, this discourse is actually given to a householder. So it was not given to a monk or a nun, but given to a householder. And in fact, there are many of such discourses, particularly in the book of gradual saints in the Anguttara Nikaya. I think there are easily more than 10, if not 15 discourses which the Buddha gave specifically to lay people. And in today's talk, I will make reference to some of them. If you want more details, I think a very good source is Bhikkhu Bodhi's book called In the Buddha's Words. All right, Bhikkhu Bodhi's collection of Pali suttas called In the Buddha's Words. It's basically an anthology of the discourses from the Pali canon. So you have one whole section where the Buddha talks about, or where Bhikkhu Bodhi talks about some of the Buddha's discourses, right, for lay people. Okay, so that is for your subsequent reading after today's talk. Now, in this Dīghajāṇu Sutta, basically the Buddha explains to Dīghajāṇu 8 personality traits or conditions that lead to happiness and well-being in this life and future lives. So for today, I'm just going to touch on the first 4, which talks more about well-being in this life. Then the following week, I believe you will be, somebody will explain to you about the well-being for future life. So what is the focus for householders, particularly in this discourse? You'll find that the Buddha mentioned the importance of right livelihood and right conduct. Likewise, the practice of 5 precepts and having good friends. So again, these are very practical kind of advice which the Buddha gave, right? And it makes the Dhamma a very living tradition. But like in all Buddha's teachings, you'll find that it's always incomplete if the Buddha doesn't bring it the question of wisdom. Yeah. So a realization of the Dhamma requires more than just ethical conduct. While ethics or morality is very important, while precepts are very important for all of us, but precepts should be understood with wisdom. And precepts should not be practiced merely as a form of ritual, and worse still, practiced without proper knowledge or understanding. Okay? So in the Buddha's discourse, the Buddha's approach, it's very important that while we are grounded in our ethical conduct, we should always develop or cultivate wisdom or knowledge. That is why in the Eightfold Path, the apex of the Eightfold Path is actually right views and right thoughts. Okay, so that's a very important part. So the Buddha defines wisdom as the ultimate trait for a householder to nurture and embody. So contrary to what some people think, or if we are a householder, we just need to do dana. Well, that's good and that's important, but that's not enough. All right. While dana is very important, while generosity, charity is very important, and likewise, morality is also very important, we must always balance it with mental development, which is cultivation of the mind, as well as developing of right views and wisdom. Okay, so you'll find that all the Buddha's teachings have got that sequential flow. It starts with, for example, doing generosity or kindness, practicing the precepts, then it transitions into cultivating the mind and then developing right views and right thoughts. Okay, so that's the whole fabric of the Buddha's teaching. So let's look at the discourse itself, right? So the sutta begins. So I have heard, of course, I here is Ananda, as all of us we understand now. So Ananda heard that on one occasion, the Blessed One is the Buddha, was staying among the Kolyans, right? I'm sure you know who are the Kolyans. During the Buddha's time, for example, Prince Siddhartha, he was born into the clan known as the Sakyas, right? Then Yashodhara, whom Prince Siddhartha married, belongs to the Kolyans, right? So that's the other kind of clans or tribes, if you like. Now, so the Buddha at that time was staying among the Kolyans. Now the Kolyans have a town named Kakarapata. So this happened in the town of Kakarapata. And there, Dīghajāṇu. So we know Dīghajāṇu was a Kolyan. So he is part of Princess Yashodhara's clan. So he went to the Blessed One, and on arrival, having bowed down to the Blessed One, sat to one side. Now, what is next is very interesting. Okay, so here, Dīghajāṇu wants to know what actually causes happiness, what gives rise to happiness. So while seated, so Dīghajāṇu asked the Buddha, and this is what Dīghajāṇu said. He said, we are lay people. That means we are not monks, we are not nuns, we are lay people. And we enjoy sensuality. We like sense pleasures, right? We live crowded with spouses and children, right? Their wives, their children. So they also use kasi fabrics and sandalwood. Well, during the Buddha's times, some of the best textiles are supposed to come from kasi, that area, right? And sandalwood, right? Nice smelling incense, for example. So during the Buddha's time, there were also what today in economics we would call maybe goods of snob appeal, right? So these are expensive stuff, right? So kasi fabrics probably will be equivalent to your present day Gucci and and LV kind of fabric. So they are very expensive during the Buddha's time. So this must be what we call a Gahapati Mahasala, a wealthy person, a wealthy householder. Right, Gahapati Mahasala, a wealthy householder. So yeah, he uses kasi fabrics, he uses sandalwood, and then he wears garlands, he wears scents, perfumes, right, creams, right. So even during the Buddha's times, right. So it's not only today that we have got perfume, right. So even those days, right, the equivalent of your Christian Dior, right. So you have that too, right, and creams. Okay, so handling gold and silver. So in today's context, maybe money, right? So during the Buddha's time, they were talking about gold and silver. So here, Dīghajāṇu was basically telling the Buddha, he said, look, we are not monks, we are not nuns, right? We are lay people. We enjoy sensuality. We have our families, we have children. We like to have nice clothes, wear nice shoes, nice perfumes, wear garlands, right? And we like money, right? We like to have wealth. So will the Blessed One, which is the Buddha, teach the Dhamma for those like us, for our happiness and well-being in this life, for our happiness and well-being in lives to come? So here you also know from this sentence or this paragraph that the people during the Buddha's time, they already believe in afterlife. So they believe in rebirth, right? So that's why it says, Dīghajāṇu wants to know what is it that will make him and people like him, for example, have happiness and well-being in this very life itself, as well as for their future life. So this is the question which Dīghajāṇu posed to the Buddha. Let's see what the Buddha replies. The Buddha said, there are 4 qualities that lead to a lay person's happiness and well-being in this life. So here you find that the Buddha was very practical. The Buddha did not tell Dīghajāṇu and by saying that, look, all these things are no good, all these things leads to craving, all these things, will lead to continuation in samsara. You should give up all those things and then become a monk or become, and become an ascetic. So that wasn't the Buddha's advice to Dīghajāṇu, right? In fact, the Buddha told Dīghajāṇu there are 4 things or 4 qualities that lead to a lay person's happiness and well-being in this life. So today I'm going to just go through these 4 items and then see how we can relate that in our everyday life today in the contemporary context. Yeah. So the first 4, or the first of the four is that to be consummate in initiative. Now, consummate means you can use the word like to be perfect, right? Or to be complete, right? Be complete in initiative, be complete in vigilance, to have good friends, and to live your life in tune, livelihood in tune. So here you find that the Buddha gave something that is really, really very practical, down to earth. The Buddha did not say, you have to go to the forest, you got to go to the cave and meditate, and then you got to study, how many thought movements make one thought process. The Buddha didn't talk about all the stuff, right? But instead, the Buddha told Dīghajāṇu 4 things. He says that if you do these 4 things, then you will actually have happiness and well-being in this very life. So let's see what are these 4 things. So they are translated by different authors in different ways. So I've used both Bhikkhu Bodhi translation and Ajahn Thanissaro translation. So the 4 things, okay? So Bhikkhu Bodhi calls it, the first thing is to have effort, persistent effort, right? Initiative is what Thanissaro Bhikkhu uses, so initiative. Then Bhikkhu Bodhi uses the word protection. In others, if you want happiness, you must know how to protect whatever you own, right? And then Thanissaro uses the word vigilance. Bhikkhu Bodhi uses the word good friendship. Thanissaro uses the word admirable friendship. And Bhikkhu Bodhi uses the word balanced living. You must live your life in balance. Then Thanissaro Bhikkhu says livelihood in tune. Okay, so I thought I'd just give you 2 different translations, right? But basically, they would mean the same thing. I'll explain a little bit more. Now, the Pali version, right? If you want to go back to the Pali words, right? The first 2, the first one is called Uthana Sampada. In other words, diligent and skilled in one's livelihood. So that's the initiative part, just to use Bhikkhu Thanissaro's translation. And then the other one, to protect your wealth from theft and disaster, vigilance, right? That is Araka Sampada, right? And then the third one, I think many of you are familiar, associating with noble and kind-hearted friends, which is the Kalyana Mitta, right? Spiritual friends, right? Kalyana Mittas. From the word Mitta, you know the word metta, right? Metta, M-E-T-T-A, right? So that is why sometimes the word metta is also translated as not only loving kindness, but friendliness. I think Bhikkhu, who is that? Bante Gunaratana, Bante Ji, I think he likes to translate loving kindness, or rather he translates the metta as friendliness. So from the word mitta, or metta, so Kalyana Mitta, associating with noble and kind-hearted friends. And the last part is to be free from harming others. So whatever we do, whatever job that we are engaged in, does that job harm others? Does it harm ourselves? Right? If it is free from harming others, that is called right livelihood. Okay, so let's look at each one of it for today, and I'll try to bring in some supplementary suttas from that talks about each of these 4. Okay, so I think at this stage, these are the 4 things. All right, so remember, initiative, vigilance, friendship, and right livelihood. So effort, protection, good friendship, balanced livelihood, initiative, vigilance, and variable friendship, livelihood. So let's look at the first one. So here he says, a lay person, by whatever occupation he makes his living. Of course, during the Buddha's time, right, main occupation, Buddha's time was mainly agriculture. So by farming, by trading, cattle tending, or archery, or as a kingsman. Kingsman would probably, in today's context, probably you're a civil servant, right? Or by any other craft, right? Could be in business. You're clever and untiring in it, endowed with discrimination in its techniques, enough to arrange and carry it out. So this is called initiative, all right? So as we all know, this word initiative, it means our ability to assess and do things, isn't it? Independently and correctly. And also to have that opportunity to act or take charge before others do. Now, in the Mangala Sutta, right, you remember the Buddha says one of the 38 blessings is to be to be skilled in the arts and sciences. In others, you have to be skilled in your profession. All right, so education becomes very important in that sense. So you want to have initiative, then you need to have some kind of here is a clever and untiring, endowed with discrimination in its techniques. In other words, you know the techniques of what you're doing, right? Now, in other parts of the Buddha's teachings, while it may be seen as specifically more about what needs to be done as to be successful in meditation, but actually you can also use it in the context of our everyday lay life. Now, this is called the Iddhipadas. Some of you have heard of Iddhipadas. They are actually translated as the 4 bases of success, right? You can read details in the Iddhipada Vibhanga Sutta, right? The Iddhipada Vibhanga Sutta, which is in the Samyutta Nikaya 5120 itself, where the Buddha talks in greater detail about what are the 4 bases of success. Now, this is related to having initiative. Basically, it means that you must have, to have the initiative, you must have the intention, isn't it? The intention or the purpose, to have that desire to achieve something. Now, the 4 bases of success, the first one is called Chanda. All right? Chanda. Now, sometimes many people have the impression that in Buddhism, when they study Buddhism, they're told that all desires are bad. We should not have any desires. The aim of Buddhism is to end all desires. But that's actually not very correct, because there are actually 2 kinds of desire, right? In fact, in the Buddha's teachings, we talk about how do you transform desires to wholesome intentions. In other words, how do you transform the desire which is usually translated as tanha into chanda. So one of the 4 bases of success is chanda. Right? So what is this chanda? It is that, so while desire or tanha is a desire that arises from ignorance and delusion, chanda, on the reverse, is also desire, but it arises from wisdom and intelligence. And how do we cultivate chanda? It is true, for example, the Eightfold Path is through having right views, right knowledge, and right thoughts. Okay, so that's the first. So that's an initiative we must all cultivate, have that positive desire to do something. We must have the desire to do something. For example, if you don't have the desire to come to Nalanda Center this morning, or to tune in to this Zoom session, you will not have that opportunity to listen to the Dhamma. So that initiative is lost. But because you have the initiative, and that initiative is grounded in what is called chanda. So that's the first of the 4 bases of success. The second one is called effort, right? The effort, the right amount of effort is also very important. And in the Buddhist teachings, even in meditation, while effort is very important, you have too much effort, your meditation is not going to be successful either. When you have too little effort, neither is it going to be successful. So the right amount of effort is important. What happens if you have too much effort? It results in restlessness and worries. When you have too little effort, it results in sloth and torpor. All right? 2 of the 5 hindrances. So effort, while it's important, we need to balance it. All right? That is why, for example, we talk about mindfulness as the one that balances our effort. Now, the third of the 4 bases of success is when we have that conscious thought, the citta, that we wanted to do it. And finally, when you have all these 3, the fourth and final one is when we have that investigative mind, or that discriminative mind. All right, in Pali, it's called Vimamsa. In fact, there's a whole sutta called Vimamsaka Sutta, where the Buddha talks about the importance of having an inquisitive mind and inquiring mind. Okay, so for initiative, in the Dīghajāṇu Sutta, where the Buddha talks about the importance of initiative, please remember initiative in the context of the 4 bases of success, the Iddhipada. All right, so you need to know more, please refer to the Iddhipada Vibhanga Sutta, right, in the Samyutta Nikaya. So that's the first one. Now let me go on to the second one, which is called vigilance. So once we have got the initiative, we want to do something with the chanda, with the effort, with the conscious thought to do it, and then we investigate what we are doing through right views and right thoughts, then we must be vigilant. Now here the Buddha in the Dīghajāṇu Sutta talks about what is meant by vigilance. The first line or the first sentence, the Buddha says, a lay person must have righteous wealth. Now, what is righteous wealth? Yeah, so it's not just wealth, but righteous wealth. Righteous wealth in the Dīghajāṇu Sutta, as well as in many other suttas. I think the other popular one is the Ananyas Sutta, also in the Anguttara Nikaya. The Buddha talks about what is righteous wealth. Now here in the Dīghajāṇu Sutta, the Buddha says righteous wealth is wealth or money which you righteously gain from your initiative, striving, effort, gathered by the strength of his arm, earned by his sweat. He protects it through vigilance, thinking. How shall neither kings nor thieves make off with this property of mine, nor fire burn it, nor water sweep it away, nor hateful airs make off with it? So this has been complete or perfect in vigilance. So very important point to note at the beginning is that whatever money, whatever wealth that we have in the Buddha's teachings, there's nothing wrong as long as it is gained righteously. In other words, gained through right livelihood, as later we will see, and gain not from, for example, from cheating other people, from corruption, from wrong means of livelihood. So that is called righteous wealth. Okay, and and here later we'll come to the topic of wealth. We go a little bit, and the Buddha mentioned here that once you have got this wealth, which is righteous wealth, which means that you have earned it through your hard work, all right? You must protect it. So that's where the vigilance comes in. You must protect it. And then he thinks, right? Remember the 4 bases of success? Vimamsa, investigation. He asks himself, how shall I take care of my wealth so that kings or thieves do not make off with this property? Now, what does this mean in our modern context? It means that whatever is due to the kings during the Buddha's time, today, whatever is due to the government. That means your personal taxes. You earn so much money, according to each government or each country, you have to pay your personal income tax. All right, so you have to make sure that you pay your tax. Because if you don't pay your tax, then the king during the Buddha's time or today, the income tax department will come after you, right? Nor thieves make off with his property of mine. Now, how do we overcome thieves from taking away our wealth, our money? We do that by keeping our money in the banks, isn't it? All right, so we keep in the banks. So you keep in the banks, not under your pillow, right? Keep the money in your bank. So thieves will not make off with your property or will not make off with your money, okay? No fire burn it, no water sweep it away. And how do you ensure that fire will not burn away your property or water will sweep it away? All right, especially if you live in Sri Muda, you know, how do you make sure that that all your property are well protected? Well, I suppose you buy insurance, isn't it? In today's context, yeah, you buy insurance, so fire and burn. So what the Buddha gave, of course, you have to understand this was 2,600 years ago. The Buddha did not use terms like putting money in the bank or putting money in insurance, right? But in today's context, we know actually that what is meant. And then the final point, no hateful airs make off with it. How does hateful airs make off with it? So even during the Buddha's time, when wealthy householders, when the Gahapati Mahasala, when they die, all right, so sometimes, you know, there's a lot of what they call quarrels and problems among heirs. Each one said, no, you know, this is meant for me, this is not meant for you. So today's context, you have read stories about very wealthy people when they die. They have so much property, but you know the children fight over it, right? So today, if you look at the Buddha's context, maybe we make sure that, you know, we do our wills and our trust deeds properly, right? So you have to understand what the Buddha mentioned to his audience 2,600 years ago in today's modern context, right? So you can see that relevance. But the key word is the first sentence, righteous wealth. Okay, that's the key word. Once your wealth is righteously earned, how do you protect it? Okay? So that's the second one. But let's go on to the third one. Friendship. A layperson spends time with other laypersons or their sons. All right? So you have to understand this is 2,600 years ago. So it's very male-dominated, very patriarchal kind of system. So no mention about daughters, right? Or wives, isn't it? But to understand this is during the time 2,600 years ago. Okay? But in today's context, of course, we would mean, children, right? Can be male, can be female, right? Young or old, who are virtuous. So here the Buddha says it's very important for us to engage, to have friends who are virtuous, right? He talks and engages them in discussion. He emulates conviction in those with conviction. That means faith, saddha, right? Virtues in those with virtues, sila. Generosity in those who are generous, right? Which is dana. Or here, I think here they use the word chaga instead of dana, right? There's a slight difference, right, between dana and chaga. So in this context, the Pali word uses chaga. And discernment, right, or wisdom, panya, in those who are discerning. Now, these four will be explained in the second session under the spiritual qualities of well-being. So this is called admirable friendship. So friendship is a very important component of the Buddhist practice, right? Just now we talk about the word kalyana mitta, isn't it? So the Buddha himself was a kalyana mitta to his monks, to the Sangha. All right. Those of you who are familiar with Tibetan Buddhism, you have heard of this word Geshe, right? Those of you who, you may have a Tibetan teacher, you may call him Geshe-la, Geshe-la. So Geshe, the word actually is a Tibetan word actually from the Pali or Sanskrit, which means Kalyana Mitta, a spiritual friend. So the Geshe, the spiritual master, the teacher himself is a spiritual friend. So spiritual friendship is very, very important. Okay. Now, in perhaps the classic text where you find the Buddha talks about the type of friends that we should mix with is in the Sigalovada Sutta. But because of time factor, and this is another discourse, so I'm just going to leave you with these two slides, which talks about what is mentioned in the Sigalovada Sutta as false friends and true friends. Okay. And here it talks about a false friend who is a taker, who is a talker, who is a flatterer, who is a destroyer. Right? So I'm not going to go through the details, but the explanations there are pretty obvious, right? So we have to be careful people that we mix with. So we have to ask ourselves, this person that we are mixing with, is he more of a taker, or is he more of a talker, or is he someone who is just a flatterer? Right? Or is he a real destroyer? So we have to find out. And here, the Sigalovada Sutta, the Buddha explains each one of it: the taker, the talker, the flatterer, and the destroyer. So these are the false friends. Now, likewise, the Buddha also mentioned in the Sigalovada Sutta 4 types of friends who are the reverse. These are what he calls the true friends. And who are the true friends? These are someone who is a helper. All right. Someone who has a true heart, someone who has a kind heart, someone who is a counselor, someone who advises you, who tells you to avoid evil, who clear your doubt, who show you the path, and someone who cares for you, all right? Who cares for you not only when you are in a good time, but also when you are in a difficult time, when you're sorrowful, for example. So the Buddha says there are these people who are your true friends, right? And again, in the Mangala Sutta, if you recall, the discourse on blessings, the Buddha also mentioned that one of the blessings, one of the 38 blessings, is to have good friends, wise friends, right? And not foolish friends, because foolish friends will just take you astray. So we have to be very careful, right? So there's a lot of other incidents where the Buddha talks about the importance of friendship. Even like, I think there's another discourse, the Buddha was telling the story of a monk who thought that he would be better off if he goes and meditate alone on his own. And despite the Buddha advising him not to meditate together with all the other Sangha members, but he insisted on going. And then after a while, he found that he could not. Then he came back. And the Buddha again reminded him of the importance of spiritual friendship. Right? And I'm sure many of you have heard about this famous dialogue between Ananda, Buddha's close attendant, and the Buddha in the Upada Sutta. In the Upada Sutta, Ananda, one day he said that he came to the Buddha and said, "Oh, Blessed One, in my meditation, I realized that actually, half the holy life comprises of friendship." And when the Buddha heard what Ananda said, Buddha told Ananda, "Oh, Ananda, please do not say that half the holy life comprises of friendship. In fact," the Buddha told Ananda, "the entire holy life, the whole holy life comprises of friendship." Right? So friendship is a very important point in the Buddha's teachings. Right? So that's why we have this word called Kalyana Mitta. Right? Someone who is a helper, someone who is a true heart, someone with a true heart, someone who is a counselor, right? And someone who cares for you. Okay? And of course, again, the Mangala Sutta, as I mentioned earlier on, the Buddha also talks about the importance of friendship. Okay, so there are details, right? I'm sure there'll be another occasion where Nalanda could arrange for someone to share with all of you on the Sigalopada Sutta. That is like the classic text, right, on how to live our life in society. Now, the last point, which is mentioned in the 4 things that we need to have in order to have a pleasant and happy life, is called livelihood in tune, right? To use Bhikkhu Bodhi's or Thanissaro's translations, right? Bhikkhu Bodhi calls it the balanced livelihood, right? So here the Buddha says there's a case where a layperson, knowing the income and outflow of his wealth, he maintains a livelihood in tune, neither a spendthrift nor a penny pincher. All right? So these are words used during the Buddha's time. Huh? Thus, will my income exceed my outflow, and my outflow will not exceed my income. So in our modern context, this paragraph basically means what? You live within your budget, live within your means. All right? If you earn 5,000 ringgit, a month, you cannot be living the life of someone who earns 50,000 ringgit a month, isn't it? Then your expenses will exceed your income. So that should not be the case, right? So he must have a livelihood in tune. So here the 4th line says that you must also not be a spendthrift, all right? Nor a penny pincher. Penny pincher is, a very stingy person, penny pincher. There's an English saying, isn't it? Penny wise, pound foolish. Penny wise and pound foolish, right? Okay, so we got to live in tune. And here the Buddha gave the example. Just as a weigher or his apprentice, when holding the scales, he knows it has tipped down so much or has tipped up so much. Likewise, the layperson, he knows the income and outflow of his wealth. He maintains a livelihood, neither a spendthrift nor so his income. So here the Buddha is using like a scale. So you must have a balance in your income and your expenses. If a layperson has a small income, but he maintains a grand livelihood, it will be rumored of him. He devours his wealth like a fruit tree eater, one of those pesticides probably, right? If a layperson has a large income, but he maintains a miserable livelihood, it will be rumored of him. This clansman will die of starvation. So here the Buddha is saying, take a moderate path, right? Do not be too stingy and do not be a spendthrift, right? So that's basically what is mentioned here. But when a layperson, knowing the income and outflow of his wealth, maintains a livelihood in tune, not a spendthrift or a penny pincher, thus will my income exceed my outflow, or my outflow will not exceed. So this is called maintaining one's livelihood in tune. Now, what is very interesting, I deliberately reproduce this part of the sutta to show that the Buddha emphasized the importance of one's living within one's means. So I think that is the reason why we find that there was a little bit more explanation there. Okay, but I just want to bring in another aspect, which is from another discourse, because in the Dīghajāṇu Sutta, the Buddha did not really talk about wrong livelihood, other than the fact that it is righteous wealth. All right, but in another discourse called the Vigilance Sutta, there are 5 things. So in Book of 5, Sutta 177, the Buddha says wrong livelihood. If your money, if your wealth is earned through weapons, through trading in weapons, or trading in living beings, right? Or in meat, or in intoxicants, or in poisons, then in the traditional Buddhist text, this is considered as wrong livelihood. Okay? Again, there's a whole sutta, so I'm not going to have time to go into details on each one of it, but please Google this particular sutta and then you can find the details, right? All right, so now subsequently, this one, again, as you can see, the Buddha actually went at length to talk about wealth to Dīghajāṇu. So this is another example, just as if there were a great reservoir. So here the Buddha uses the simile of a reservoir. This reservoir has 4 inlets and 4 drains. Inlets mean water coming in, drains mean the water going out. And a man were to close the inlets and open the drain. Now what happens? Water will flow out, right? And the sky will not to pour down proper showers. There's no rain. What will happen? The depletion of that great reservoir could be expected, right? So you open the drains, water flow out, but there's no rain. So before long, your reservoir is going to have no water left. So the Buddha says, in the same way, these are the 4 drains on one's wealth, right? Debauchery in sex, drink, gambling, evil, friendship. So here the Buddha also go further details into the money that you have already earned. And he says, if you are not careful, then you will lose all your wealth, all your money. And you can lose it in 4 ways. And what are the 4 ways? And here the Buddha says the 4 ways you can lose your money. If you debauchery in sex means, you get addicted to sex, right? Maybe you start seeing prostitutes or pornography, all those things, And, of course, during the Buddha's time, I would imagine he was referring basically to males, but then, it can apply equally to females as well. Yeah. So debauchery in sex. So sex addiction, for example, is an issue. About drink, alcohol, for example. In the Sigalovada Sutta, the Buddha also talks about it. In another discourse, which the Buddha gave in the Sutta Nipata, or the Parabhava Sutta, where the Buddha talks about what are the causes of downfall. And one of the causes for downfall is also drinking and gambling, evil companionship. So these are the 4 things. So these are like the 4 drains on one's wealth. Okay? And then the Buddha says, again, he uses the simile of the reservoir, 4 inlets, 4 drains. Now the man will open the inlets, he close the drains, and then it start raining. What will happen? The reservoir will have even more water. Yeah. So in the same way, there are these 4 inlets to one's wealth. So here the Buddha gave the other example. If you don't practice the debauchery in sex, in other words, just the reverse. In other words, no debauchery in sex, you observe the 3rd precept, right? You abstain from sexual misconduct, right? So here, remember, the Buddha was not addressing to monks and nuns, right? Monks and nuns, there's no question of sexual misconduct at all. It's a question of celibacy. But here he's addressing a lay person who have a wife, maybe got a children. So they can have sexual pleasures, but it must be within the context of the 5 precepts. Yeah, the 3rd precept in particular, kamesu miccachara. So no debauchery in sex. The Buddha did not say no sex, but no debauchery in sex, right? No debauchery in drink. Now here this is debatable because in the 5th precept we say to avoid alcohol, isn't it? Yeah, avoid alcohol. So here give the impression that as long as you drink a little, that's fine. But again, as I said, that's debatable. So it depends on your practice, right? If you follow the 5 precepts, then you avoid drinking by all means. Yeah, no debauchery in gambling. So again, you avoid gambling, and then you have good friends, right? The friends as stipulated or mentioned in the Sigalovada Sutta, right? The 4 true friends. So here, the Buddha talks actually in great length about wealth, right? In the Dīghajāṇu Sutta itself. Now, it's not only in the Dīghajāṇu Sutta that Buddha talks about wealth. I just highlight to you here, this is another discourse called the Adiya Sutta, which is also in the Anguttara Nikaya. As I mentioned early on, there are many discourses where the Buddha talks about how you should in other words, the benefits of wealth. How do you benefit from having wealth, right? And the blessings of having wealth. Again, wealth which is righteously earned. Okay, that is the assumption, right? So number one, you have financial independence. You don't have to depend on others, right? Don't all of us want to be financially independent? Yeah, we all want that. And the Buddha talks about that in the Adiya Sutta, right? So the Buddha did not say that all of you must give up your money, give up your wealth. He says you should have financial independence. And once you have financial independence, then you can benefit friends and associates, all right? You can also protect yourself against misfortunes. You can, with that money you have, you make offerings to departed relatives and devas, right? And then you're able to support the Sangha. So again, I'm not going to go into details, but again, I'll just show you that there's this particular discourse. So if you're interested to read up, find out more about what the Buddha mentioned about how you can utilize your wealth, then there's this Adiya Sutta that you can refer to, right? Likewise, there's another called the Pathakama Sutta. In the Pathakama Sutta, this the Buddha gave to Ananda Pindika, right? 4.61. The Buddha talks about once your wealth, you should use that wealth to benefit your relatives, right? So maybe during Chinese New Year, take your relatives out for a nice dinner, right? So, the Buddha was talking about very practical things. Right? Your guests, right? If you've got guests, how to take care of them. The departed relatives, share merits with them. The king, right? Of course, with the government, make sure you pay your tax, right? And the devas. So in Buddhist cosmology, we have a lot of close proximity actually with the devas, right? So that is why sometimes even in puja sessions, you find that we have invocation of the devas, isn't it? All right, invocation of the deva. So again, there are many sutta. Again, I'm not going into details, but I just reference you the name of the discourse so that you can find out, you can Google it after today's talk. Okay, maybe there's one more which I did not mention here. This is actually 4.61. I think the next sutta, 4.62, where the Buddha also told Ananda Pindika that there are actually happiness to be derived if you are wealthy. And he says there are 4 types of happiness if you are wealthy. And the first happiness is you have ownership. You own that wealth because it's righteously owned. And because you righteously own, you should enjoy your wealth. So it's interesting, the Buddha saying that you should enjoy your wealth, right? And then the Buddha says you also are happy because if you have wealth, then you pay off your debt. So you have debtlessness, right? When you're not in debt, don't you think you are very happy if you don't have debt? Right? And finally, he says blamelessness, right? If you know that wealth, nobody can accuse you that your wealth is through wrong means, that you have cheated other people, or it's through corrupt means, then you'll find blamelessness. So the Buddha says there are 4 types of happiness from wealth, right? So many different opportunities where you read the suttas. So as a lay person, right, you can actually get some advice on how we can live our life in a wholesome way, right? Okay, so a lot of references, even the Dīghajāṇu Sutta. Okay. So I think we have talked about this, loss of wealth. So the reverse also mentioned. So I'm going to skip that. Okay, so finally, that ends the first 4 which I taught today. So I'll just give you a preview of what you will be exposed to in the next session. All right. So the next session, the Buddha says that while you develop these 4 qualities which will bring happiness in this very life itself, But you must also remember other qualities you need to cultivate, which will bring to your happiness in subsequent life, right? And this will be faith in the Buddhas and his teachings, practice of morality, which is the precepts, and then chaga, as I said, there's a slight difference in terms of dana and chaga. You can ask the next speaker what's the difference between dana and chaga. There's a slight difference, generosity in giving charity, and finally wisdom. Yeah, finally wisdom. So this will be part of the following. So this is just a preview of what's next. Okay, so you have a balanced life, worldly welfare, and spiritual wealth. Right. So the Dīghajāṇu Sutta, remember it is 8 point. It's Sutta number 8, right? Okay, Sutta is Sutta, the book of 8, or rather. So there are 8 things there. So for worldly welfare, initiative, vigilance, friendship, and right livelihood or balanced life. In spiritual welfare, you cultivate faith, virtues, generosity, and wisdom. Right? You do these 8 qualities, then we have our life cut up for us as a Dhamma practitioner. Okay, so that ends. So may all beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from happiness and bliss, and may they always be without suffering. And may all sentient beings be in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. So thank you very much for your time and patience for the past 45 minutes. And whatever has been of benefit to you, I hope you will take it with you, analyze it, investigate it, and put it into practice.